one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Looks like the first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from December 2nd, 2020. Everybody's had a chance to review those and look at those. I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes,
Got a motion
December 2nd.
I second it.
and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Next item, we've got a preliminary plat. This is for the Ford Harward subdivision. And Brandon, you gonna speak to us on that one?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you being here tonight and providing service to the community. The first subdivision, does this sound all right? Okay. Ford Harward subdivision, this is a standard subdivision just off of Main Street as you go north of I-15. It's currently zoned industrial, and they're looking to do a standard subdivision lot, I believe 16 lots. I had that number in front of me a second ago. No real issues to work through on this one, other than in the conditions to call to your attention, there are some utilities that are being worked out with the applicant. If we can go to the let's jump to the utility page if you don't mind, Mike. Or go up to the phasing plan, sorry. So this kind of shows their phasing plan. You can see there's 16 proposed lots. There's one existing there on the corner of 1400 North and Main. They're looking for the first phase to do an expansion to the west, to the rear of the existing car dealership for some additional inventory. I believe most of those improvements are already in if you've had a chance to drive by the site. And then there on 1600 North, they do have some, excuse me, some interest in development there. But as you can see, the road as it curves to the west and drops down away from the railroad tracks, there are quite a few utilities. And so we do have the condition that's recommended that they enter into a development agreement with the city so we can work out any relocation of those utilities. Any questions for staff on this subdivision?
So none of the roads will be necessary on phase one because they're already on a road.
Well, you'd see improvements to both 1600 North and 1400 North. And so currently on 1400 North, for instance, the road ends here.
Yes.
And so you'd see it extended to the west property line, which would be advantageous. City owns this piece here, and we'd love to have that road go through. And so that would be great improvements that are needed there. And then 1600 North, you'd see that there is some widening and improvements that would take place on that road as well.
Would they also need to improve that area that comes south?
Generally, it's a half plus 10 or 13. Half plus 13 is what they end up improving there on, I believe it's 100 West. Thank you.
This is all already industrial zoned and general plan industrial.
I believe the general plan designation is commercial where it's located near the interchange, but we do currently have it in the I-1 industrial zone.
So with it being a preliminary plat, if they come forward with any commercial businesses, would we need to change the zoning for
Not
that?
necessarily. Our industrial zone is pretty loose and it considers many different types of land uses.
Any other questions for staff?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Brandon. All right, is the developer here? Anyone to speak on this development? Doesn't look like it. And preliminary plats, we don't do public hearing on those, do we? Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, I would entertain a motion. Or if there's any comment.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion that the planning commission recommends approval of the preliminary plat in accordance with staff's conditions of approval.
Okay, I have a motion
Second that.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that goes to the city council. Or does it? Did we approve or did we recommend?
That one was
We
for
approve.
approval as a standard subdivision.
Okay.
So the next item is,
Did you approve?
I think I recommended approval.
Do we need to
I'll do it
change
again.
that?
Correct.
I'll do it again.
We understood it was for approval, but that was the item on the agenda. So
We're good?
if you're comfortable with that,
I'm good with that, yeah.
we'll make sure the minutes reflect that.
Okay, thank you. All right, next one is the Haymaker
We can-
subdivision.
jump to let's go ahead and go to the interactive map so we can kind of orient ourselves. So this is not a standard subdivision. This is being proposed as a master plan development. And so your action tonight would be a recommendation to the city council for final approval. The reason why it's being pursued as a master plan development is some of the lot sizes fall below the minimum 12,000 square feet that's required by the zone. What we did, or let me address this real fast. So where the pointer is at, this is the property we're referring to. This is a city-owned piece of property. As you can see, we've got legacy farms that are adjacent to the property. It's currently zoned R112, and the applicant is looking to develop with the density associated with an R112 master plan development. So in this case, they're looking at 47 lots. We went ahead and did a little bit of research and math with the consideration in mind that we've talked recently about master plan developments. And so, for instance, with this proposed subdivision, the average lot size would be just over 13,000 square feet. And the density falls below what would be the maximum allowed by either the current master plan ordinance or any proposed changes that we've talked about. This one is pretty straightforward. It's a great layout, utilizes all the existing street stubs that are connected into the property. And as far as red lines, they're working through just a few with staff. And I don't have any other information for you unless you have any questions.
I'm trying to look here to see how many of the lots are less than the 12,000 square feet.
So just under 60% of the lots meet it. I want to say there was about 20 that did not, 20 of the 47. We had a low
How
lot
much?
size of 9981 and a high lot size of 16,196. So if you see 11 there up in the top corner, that's the smallest one right there.
So 1 through 11 and 26 through 17 are all below that.
Yeah.
And the smaller ones are actually on the outside where even smaller lots abut. And the bigger lots for this plat are in the interior of the plat. It's actually, I think it's a pretty good design.
Yeah.
Is they're still bigger than the ones that are behind them?
What is the average, Brandon?
13,150 square feet.
And most of those ones on the edge aren't very much smaller than the 12,000 also. They're pretty close. Bravo.
Is the applicant here tonight for this one?
I don't believe I see him.
All right. Any additional comments or questions, or does anyone want to make a motion for a recommendation to the city council?
I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
that planning commission recommends approval of this preliminary plat and master plan development to city council in accordance with staff's findings and conditions.
Got a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. And then next agenda item are proposed changes to the general plan for the Del Monte Road area.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the commission is all aware that subsequent to the city council taking action on a development that was approved back just several months ago along Del Monte Road that's included in the area that were proposed to be changed to the general plan here. Staff was directed by the city council to review the general plan designation for the area. Essentially, it's between Arrowhead Trail and the American Leadership Academy on the west side of Del Monte Road. So, that being the case, we have a handful of different options that we've prepared as staff for you to review and consider as potential ways perhaps to amend this part of the general plan. There are two different components. There's the land use map, and then we have the text of the general plan. I'm going to focus first on this, on the specific item that the City Council's asked us to review relative to a map amendment, but then, really as a distinct item, I'd also, perhaps after you've acted on this, like to talk through some recommendations that we have to change the text of the general plan as well, in some fairly insignificant ways. So that being said, I think maybe the easiest way to describe what we're starting from and what some of the options are, this is the staff report here. So Mr. Clark, I think it's option 5. If you go down to that last one, this is the status quo. This is the current general plan. That is a legitimate option for you to consider, leaving it alone. And as you can see, the designation that parallels essentially Del Monte Road, again from Arrowhead Trail up to ALA, is predominantly that mixed use. That's what that blue color indicates. The mixed use designation allows for a number of different residential zoning districts, a few different commercial zoning districts, with the idea being that oftentimes this designation is a good transition between, maybe different land uses that are really, really distinct from an impact perspective. One might be, for example, like a heavy commercial type of a use, retail, something like that. This is the kind of designation that we try to use sometimes between that type of use, for example, in a single-family neighborhood. In this particular case, going back to what I recall about the 2010 effort to amend the general plan, which is when this configuration was born. This came about largely because of some of the history that existed along this corridor, where there really was a mix of uses going back in time, some very, very heavy industrial uses, some agricultural uses. We had anticipated a transition to residential uses. This was shortly after the American Leadership Academy started to operate, shortly after the River Cove and Quail Hollow subdivisions really got under construction. We knew, it was an area that was fairly dynamic in terms of land use and that there would be changes. And that's just a little bit about how this came about. And the use of the mixed use designation in this kind of a setting, I think, is consistent with how we've used it elsewhere in the community. But again, I mostly reference that now just to show that this is the current. Our land use map of the general plan, by design, does not get terribly specific. So as we go through some other options, which incidentally is not an exhaustive list of everything that you might want to consider, you'll see that they generally don't vary a lot. And it's because there are only so many tools in the toolbox. So, Mr. Clark, I don't think it matters really what order we go through these in necessarily.
Oh, backwards?
Let's do that. Sure. So, one thing that you'll see that we as staff would consistently recommend that you consider is the nature of the corner of Arrowhead Trail and Del Monte Road. With there being a signal on Arrowhead Trail, and with that being a UDOT facility, a state highway, a facility that is a significant thoroughfare not only for Spanish Fork but also for a bigger region, we do think that whether it's via the plans that we've already seen for the development of that property or with something else, that for the foreseeable future that site should at least be reserved for some type of non-residential development. So you'll see, again, consistently that we would recommend that be designated commercial.
Just gonna get the no change, then we can see how it compares to the no change.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Which incidentally, the uses that would be allowed in this particular zoning district, I'm sorry, in this particular general plan designation, just our commercial designation, also would be allowed in the mixed use. There is some crossover there, so I guess you could also say we're not suggesting really any change there. Then with what we've identified as option 4, moving to the north, and I'll jump to the top, I guess here. We currently have an approved townhome development here, the Del Monte Townhomes, and right next to that we have the MTech facility. It used to be MATC, a technical college. In short, we think that arrangement just of land uses is really what the mixed use designation is intended to accommodate and even facilitate if properties are vacant still. So the idea that those two properties be designated mixed use seems to make some sense to us. And then we really get into the one difference that will come through with the different scenarios that we look at. And incidentally, this is the only scenario that we've put forth for you to consider where there would be a residential designation for everything in between the property on the corner and MTech, which largely I think is owned by one property owner, that would really be designed to only accommodate zoning districts that would allow for single-family homes. That's the low-density residential designation that would allow for something in the range of 2.5 to 3.5 units to the acre. So as we go from this to option 3, again, I don't think you'll see a lot of significant difference. With this one, really 2 differences, and you'll see that we're kind of stretching to illustrate different options that might exist. I don't agree that this is the best scenario, but potentially the MTech facility could be designated residential on the general plan. But the bigger difference here is that rather than having the property between MTech, I think most importantly, and the property on the corner designated low-density residential, that would be designated medium-density residential, which would accommodate potentially some single-family homes. Also, it would allow for zoning districts that would allow for attached housing. I don't mean to be coy at all, but we've had conversations about this property being developed with that kind of a combination, some single-family homes and townhomes. And I'll also mention that particularly relative to that property that's between MTech and the property on the corner, staff is recommending that be designated medium-density residential, because we think that particular kind of configuration makes a lot of sense between commercial development on the corner, MTech, and as well abutting the residential neighborhood that we have to the west. We think that could be a good fit in that setting as well, with single-family homes abutting the manner in which this property could be developed. The next option, I kind of speed through this. Again, not a big change. This indeed is exactly what staff's recommending you consider approving tonight, where the only difference between this and what we just looked at is that MTech would be designated mixed use along with the property to the north of that that we have the project approval on. Medium density residential for the remaining part. Again, a number of different zoning districts are consistent with that designation. So those are tools that you would have to select from as a specific development proposal comes forward for preliminary plat approval and a zone change for that property, which I think frankly could come fairly soon in a matter of just a few months. So again, this is the arrangement that staff is recommending be approved, and I think we have one last one that again is not dramatically different, but again, just another thing that you could consider. So maybe going back to something similar to that second option that we looked at, which is actually option 4. Again, certainly that property could be developed with single-family homes. That's a fairly significant change from the current general plan designation, and I'll just leave it at that, for you to deliberate on. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have relative to this. Also, for both the map and anything that you want to act on tonight relative to text changes, you do need to hold a public hearing.
Question for you, Dave. So this one that's on the screen right now, the 2.5 to 3.5, we've already had the property owner approach us and approach the city with some plans. And I don't think the plans that they presented would fit in that. So legally, would we, at this point, since the property owner's already approached and started the process, would we legally even be able to do that one as an option?
You may hear different opinions from different people tonight on that. The land use map of the general plan is an advisory document. So right now, the only thing that literally somebody has a right to operate with is the existing zoning. Beyond that, I would say that in my opinion, there is a best practice, which is to follow the general plan when you make decisions about zoning, but there's not a legal obligation that ultimately the city council has to treat this document as anything other than just that, an advisory document. Now that being said, frankly, for the role that I play in making a recommendation here, the medium density residential designation that we're recommending be assigned to the last vacant property along the Del Monte corridor. I think that's the most consistent with the current general plan, which not only do I think makes some pragmatic sense in terms of working with that particular property owner as they move forward to develop, but also I think it's a good fit from a land use perspective. So that's relatively easy for me to recommend be part of the change, but no, I don't think there's a legal issue that you need to be concerned about.
And option 2 is the closest to the proposals we've heard on all 3 sections of that line there.
Right, yeah. And I almost, in one sense, kind of regret that. The city council, I think, is dead serious about wanting this question to be studied thoroughly, and to have this reviewed not just be kind of a parroting of what you've heard before and they've heard before, to accommodate anything in particular. That all being the case, really, we as staff believe option 2 makes the most sense going forward.
Right.
So
In the MTech property, if we were to do the option here on the left, 3, to general plan that for residential, that doesn't necessarily, it would still be zoned mixed use until that gets changed. So if the MTech were to go away, another school or another mixed use facility could still move in there and use it without needing to change the zoning, correct? Even though the general plan now is residential.
help refresh me on what MTech is currently zoned. I think it's business park, right?
I have it here.
Okay. So, as the Development Review Committee was discussing this, I think a really helpful suggestion was made. I think it was our city manager that made it. And I've reached out to the director of MTech. We exchanged voicemails, played a little bit of phone tag right before the holidays, and I haven't caught up with him yet. MTech, that is a public facility in essence. Not only is it this property here that they own, but also the space that's between this, which is where the townhomes would be constructed, and the single-family neighborhood to the west of those. So this is all MTech property, if you will, that's been designated, or sorry, it's been zoned business park. We would like to bring forward a proposal to change that zoning to public facilities. So while I don't think we prescribe that actually as one of the zoning districts in the general plan that's intended to be consistent with the mixed use designation, it also is a unique zone in that it's really intended to work in any particular designation throughout the city, as we have all different types of things, whether they be parks, schools, utility facilities, or a number of different uses that public facility zone is intended to permit and really to accommodate. We think that's probably the best fit, and we think that's a good way as well to provide, maybe the neighbors to the west some understanding of what they could expect to see, you know, in that space between the townhomes and their homes going forward. So it would be great if MTech, which I think ultimately is the state of Utah, is agreeable to us initiating that change and bringing it forward. If they have concerns about that, there's another avenue that we could take, perhaps to initiate that change as well. And I anticipate being ready to talk more with you about that in February.
Which means option 2 then is the best option to do a public facility zoning in the future.
So are the schools sitting on public facility zone?
Yeah, we've had some conversations with the Nebo School District in the past about changing their properties to public facilities. I don't think that's happened. Okay, so that's probably the exception to the rule, unless am I missing something? Yes, you can see there that, for example, Spanish Fork High School hasn't been, at least predominantly that hasn't been. You can see though that
Rock Bank.
the Justice Center property and where UMPA's office is, that has been city office building, city parks.
Park hasn't.
Is it a new designation?
It's probably 8 or 9 years old, and because of the really little effect that local zoning has on public schools, it's probably fairly non-consequential as to whether, you know, a school property gets zoned one way or another. It maybe for people like me that are kind of sometimes get hung up on order, I probably would prefer to see it designated public, that is, public schools throughout the community designated public facilities than a lot of people, but we haven't made a big effort to work with the school district on that yet.
Any other questions for staff? All right, thanks, Dave. Okay, this is a public hearing, so at this time, we'll go ahead and move into public hearing. As you approach, just state your name, and I think that's probably good enough. So go ahead. Yeah, try and limit your comments if possible to around 3 to 4 minutes.
I'm not very long-winded.
2 minutes then.
I represent the developer on the corner piece here. We applied for,
What was,
it's a self.
what was your name?
Oh, I'm Brad
Sorry.
Kitchen. I'm sorry, I apologize.
You're fine.
We just wanted to come and show our face. We had an approved storage facility there, and thank you very much. But we pulled our building permits and we started construction. Now, started digging some stuff about a week or 2 ago. So we're in the middle of that. And this is an anticipated zone change, I think, that we had agreed to in our original agreement. Is that correct? This proposed change to commercial?
I don't think so.
I think it fits within the mixed use designation.
With the original, I think we moved it to RR, didn't we?
The current zoning is rural residential in the corner, and this would not do anything to change that.
Yeah.
So currently, the project that Mr. Kitchen's referring to, that's a vested project, and they have every legal right to move forward with their current approval. I think it's probably best to say that if for whatever reason that project didn't move forward, then they'd simply need to have the zoning change from rural residential to something else to be able to get something else approved.
Did the zone change after their application was submitted? Is that what happened?
Kind of a long story. Project was approved with an industrial zone. Project approval expired. City council revested the project, and sort of in the same motion, after the vesting was put back into place, moved to change the zoning, however, to rural residential, so that if that project, for whatever reason, did not see its way all the way through to completion, then in effect the city would get another bite at the apple as part of the zone change process, all of which I think is irrelevant. You know, these folks building the storage units now, so.
Yeah, it started. So anyway, that's how I understood. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome.
Thanks.
you go ahead, Chris. No, I'm just listening. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. We had an opportunity to meet last month. Cody Winterton, and with me tonight is my uncle Ty Tingy. My goal tonight is not to put you in a tough spot because I understand what led to this. But what I'd like to point out tonight is that at the time that this process was initiated by council when they asked staff to start to review this, there was some unknowns, and I think nobody knew what our intentions with our property, and when I say our, the Tingy family, nobody understood what our intentions were. So I think it was a smart action by City Council in that time to ask staff to review it. That being said, what I'd like to encourage tonight is a couple of things. My position is that the city got it right the first time in 2010, and it's been this way by leaving it as mixed use. I'm here to tell you tonight, and I'll go on record publicly, we have no intentions of pursuing something aggressive here, 12 units to the acre. In fact, you know exactly what we're pursuing. So my ask is, I don't want to get caught up in some administrative or some, action with this run in parallel with us, because we've come forward, because we've submitted a plan, and not only have we submitted a plan, we've spent hours with the homeowners negotiating that plan, making compromises. We've continued to work with staff to tweak the corners, to make everything look perfect. And given that this is an advisory document anyways, my request tonight is either you go with option 5, which is you leave it, and so, and again, I don't want to put you in a tough position, but it feels a little bit like we're being singled out here. We're the only property owner along this corridor now that's not going to get the benefit of kind of the general plan. And so my request would be either you continue with option 5, let us go through our process, or you just table this for a month, let us get it in, and not go through the process. And I'm encouraged by the fact that there's not a lot of people here tonight. I hope that that's a product of the fact that we've been active. We didn't sit around and try to put you in a room where you had to, debate with homeowners. Instead, what we did is we went out into the community, we met with homeowners, and we believe that we've come up with a transition plan, which is exactly what mixed use is intended to do. We're transitioning from single family to storage units to college. That's exactly what Spanish Fork City's mixed use designation is for. And the other problem is, because I'm an attorney, I just don't want to give up any rights. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So now, as I sit here tonight, I get extremely nervous not going on the record and saying, our request is give us a little time. Let us develop it in what we believe is the most efficient, effective way we can. And then if for some reason that doesn't work out, you can always revisit and come back and do something like this. But our goal is to work with you, not to work against you. And I understand you have a lot of eyes on you and you need to do the right thing. But I just feel like this is an administrative action, since this is advisory anyways. It's just not necessary, given that we're here, we're telling you what we're doing, we've got a plan ready, we've already spent money on engineering, and I just don't want to get caught up in this administrative moment, if that makes sense. So.
Does your plan fit into the option 2, the 3.5 to 8 homes per acre?
Great question. It's very close. We're not at 9, but we're just slightly above 8, and we've already compromised a significant amount. So, as I mentioned to you the last time I was here, we made a strategic decision. Instead of coming in and asking for 12 and negotiating our way back down to some number, we just asked for what we think is best for the project. And we've already conceded a few units here and there. It's not a big deal to the community, but it's huge to us as a family. Every little unit is a meaningful amount of money. And so that's exactly what I'm concerned about, is I don't want to get caught up in, because this goes forward and we come in at 8.3, just a little, that we're now debating, and I haven't used this opportunity to bring that in. It's not 9, but it's right just a little bit over 8 right now. And this is a plan, as I said, we've already been meeting with staff. We've already made some compromises, yeah.
The plat we saw last time is 8.3 per...
Yeah, I don't know the exact, and I don't remember. We've already reduced a few units since that version at the request of staff. So we took your recommendations, we took staff's recommendations, we went back, we've reduced it down from what we presented to you. But it feels to me like it's perfect. So I just want to present a perfect plan to you, and I don't want to, does that make sense? I don't want to get caught up in this. So.
Has that been submitted? Your new
We're very close.
Submitted?
It's going to be submitted within weeks, if hopefully even sooner.
But you don't know what the count per unit per
I'd have to do some calculations right now.
It's above 8.
is above 8.
Yeah, just it's.
I mean, it's based on what I remember, the last version said was 3 units above 8.
Yeah.
Maybe, Cody and I talked about this probably before the meeting. I think we as staff view that 8 as part of the again, advisory document that the general plan is, as the ceiling for us to make a recommendation, something be approved. You, as the planning commission and the city council, you can take whatever perspective with that you care to.
I think that's the concern that he has, is the perspective we take may not be,
I've tried to be clear to him that
Yeah.
he should not expect a recommendation, if this gets approved from staff with anything above 8, but that doesn't necessarily bind you or the council.
I don't think you'd have to worry if this were to be approved
Okay.
and you're close to that 8. Personally, I don't think you'd have to worry about
but
it.
at the same time, if we have, now maybe this is not the time to bring this up, but we have our own discussion, but if we have the project on the corner started, the townhomes of Del Monte approved, it's Amtech and these guys.
They're close. At this point.
Seems like we're
Well, but
halfway
if,
through it already.
if it's not, if it is medium density residential as a general plan, and he comes in with a plat that is not congruent with any of the zones associated with the medium density general plan, wouldn't we have to change the general plan? We'd have to amend it to allow his plat the way he has it. Correct?
That's a great question.
Sometimes I agree.
Yeah, you done, sorry.
So because the city started looking into it first, prior to anything coming to them, city's got priority.
Yeah, and where I'm coming from is, I liked his plat. Just so you guys know, I liked it.
Oh, is it already?
I thought it was really thoughtful,
Sorry.
the way he was abutting the residences to the west, the natural downhill. I actually really liked it. I liked that he
This
met
one?
with the neighbors.
Nope.
There was
This
a
one.
lot of good things about that plat, which is
But,
why.
but not that this is gonna happen, but if we were to leave it and then they come with something totally different than what we just saw, at that point,
And that's what concerns me, because if we go to if you do a high density residential general plan amendment to accommodate his 8.3, he actually has a
Open the
right
door.
now. And the precedent is, we just approved that, so why wouldn't we approve R4 or R3 or?
Okay, I have a question.
That
Is-
concerns me.
very
Is
good point.
medium density residential, the legal numbers are 3.5 to 8, so we can't say 3.5 to 9? Or 3.5 to 8.5?
I feel like that's a derivative of, right, perfect. Anything else before and I think those are two really germane questions. Again, the general plan, and I say again, because we've talked about it, I haven't necessarily said it tonight, but the general plan by design is not intended to be terribly specific. I think that's really, really important, in fact, that you and the city council then, frankly, us as staff, property owners, we can take into consideration some site-specific things as we make recommendations on zoning. When we review the general plan citywide, which is indeed how the existing designation came about for this corridor, it's impossible to do that. It's impossible to account for everything, including changes maybe that occur in between those significant rewrites or updates of a document like this. So with it not being extremely specific, from a zoning perspective, there's crossover. So, for example, whether the property were designated,
Is there crossover at the time the zone is applied, though? The time the zone is applied, it's always congruent with the general plan, correct? You follow what I'm saying? The moment city council says R16, the moment that happens, it has to be congruent with the general plan at that moment.
no, I think,
Okay, that's the
I
question.
think,
Keep going.
no.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. And when I say crossover, I mean, for example, that we're talking here about medium density residential as the designation, staff's recommendation. You can see that we have a number of different zoning districts that the general plan says are consistent with that designation of the general plan, meaning you've got quite a few options that would be consistent with the general plan. The R3 zone, for example, that also is consistent with the high-density residential designation. So that's what I mean by crossover. And that's not entirely uncommon as we look at other zoning districts and general plan designations as well.
What's the max density per unit for R3? Per
12.
acre?
12. And that's really where the general plan is intended to come into play. So for example, with this particular site, it wouldn't be uncommon for, in fact, I'll use this as the example, the Diamond Fork apartments on 400 North near the railroad tracks, 12 units to the acre. That is a very different model than what I think historically we've thought makes sense for the Del Monte corridor. So I don't think really we've ever anticipated seeing density get up to that level, even though the mixed-use designation would allow for that. Having the ability to say, well, even though the property is going to be zoned R3, but through the way in which projects get approved, having ultimately the council approve something with a density that's less than 12, a different type of housing style, and less bulk and mass than what we have there. I think that's some of the latitude that the general plan gives us.
So you said, if we did a medium density general plan designation, 8.3 units per acre in a master plan development submittal is, we could zone it to accommodate that?
The zoning that would be needed,
Density general plan designation.
yeah, again, good question. The zoning district that we have that's really intended to accommodate projects through a pretty wide range of densities. I think about 5 units to the acre up to 12 is the R3 zone.
So I'm hearing yes.
So yes, it would be zoned R3 regardless. And then we would recommend that you use the general plan as the guide on, more of within that big range of density that would be legal to have in the R4 zone.
That's
Exactly where a project lands.
And that's the only barrier at that point. So
That's the real barrier, right? That's the
Of course,
law.
I'm thinking
That's
out
the,
loud.
with it being the zoning.
I'm thinking out loud, that's what I would want to see, is that we do medium density as a general plan designation in that area, and then Cody can come forth with what I think is a great plat, from what I've seen, and it provides the city council latitude to apply zoning that fits the 8.3 or 8.4, but it also, because of the general plan designation, narrows it down where 8 really is the perceived maximum with some flexibility, so that the city council or even Cody wouldn't come back and say, oh, I want R3 for the whole thing. Because I would be against that, and I think city council would be too. And if the general plan designation was not medium density, that would be a real problem for the city.
I think I need to say one thing maybe a little bit differently than you did. The whole thing would be R3. The whole property would be zoned R3, but, again, there's nothing that says you're obligated as part of a zone change to approve a project at the maximum end of the density range. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So zoning at R3 with a specific development proposal in front of you as a master plan development with the understanding that that's getting approved at let's say 8 units to the acre instead of 12.
I don't like that.
Doesn't sit well with you.
No, if it's permitted at 12 per acre and you get an application at 12 per acre in R3, I don't see how the city can say no.
Okay.
It's because
What's
the
the
city,
precedent for the city
Here's-
saying no?
it's because the city waits to put the zoning on that zone until you have a plat master.
There's that's mechanically how it works in that I think that insulates the city pretty well, but there's a more important part of just the zoning law, and it's that the only use that's allowed by right in the R3 zone is a single-family home on a 6,000 square foot lot. That's it.
There you go.
So to get anything else, we're talking about a master planned development, and that's where that latitude on the density comes into play,
You know me
and
well
where,
enough to know that's what you needed to say.
so, and maybe it's because, the holidays, I took a break,
Why did you start with that?
I'm a little slow, yeah. And now I've completely forgot what Sean asked me, so I'm gonna have to.
That was good.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what happens anyway. A zoning is not usually changed, zoning is not usually applied
Right.
until you have a plat map in front of you.
And I could, yeah.
Proposal.
And there are lots of hypotheticals that we could talk about too, but
Like the developer backing out after it was already rezoning and they spent later.
which is why, in my view, having it be by right, is
That's
the
what I
safety
mean.
net. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry to make that complicated.
It wasn't.
Are we still in public hearing?
Very
Yeah,
Wasn't needed.
that was all your fault.
Thank you, Dave.
public hearings. Public hearings.
Additional comments from the public? Public hearing is still open. Anybody else want to speak to this? Nobody's outside. All right, seeing none, we will move out of public hearing. Well, what are your thoughts?
I have thoughts. I think that after all of the many months of conversations that we've had about this area, I think that the Tingy's plan makes sense to me. I think they worked really hard. It's a family plot of land, just with the configuration. I think it makes sense, and so I think that option 2 is I guess the only thing is there any reason to have MTech be mixed use versus medium density?
I would keep a mixed use. Was my thought, because if it's ever repurposed, it'll be office or public facility or something of that nature before it'll be residences. Only
Yeah.
because if MTech needs to sell, they're going to need to sell to a user that's willing to pay more than just for the vacant land for residences. And I really think their only exit strategy, which is what we talked about, is some sort of mixed use designation. It's the most pragmatic, and it's currently MTech, so you might as well. I think you keep it mixed use.
Yeah, I agree.
Option 2 would be my opinion also.
Okay.
Here's my other, just going back. Is there really any reason, now that we've seen a plan and a map, is there any reason to change it to medium density residential? Could we just keep it?
That was my question at the start of this, since we are really only talking about the Tingy property and MTech, really, and MTech is already in place, the only parcel being affected is the Tingy property. The property on the corners already started construction, they've already been approved for the townhomes. MTech is existing, but Joseph's point was, well, then it could come back as something else.
Especially on the heels of us changing to something else
Right.
so
So,
quickly.
Option 2 allows the plan that we've seen and like and feel comfortable with. Still allows them that flexibility.
And it allows the Tingies to come in.
Yeah.
The way that we've seen that plat.
Yeah. So by leaving it, it opens the door to more options down the road.
Higher density.
Higher density.
Even higher density, Sean.
Well, option 2 looks great, as long as, I feel like given our discussion, option 2 looks good.
I might have one question for everyone then is, Corey started the discussion that they may be interested in leaving this for another month until they actually come forward with their plan, but that leaves you guys out on a limb if it's not approved later. If we go with this now, you guys can go forward with some confidence that what you're proposing will come to fruition. If we don't do it, who knows what could happen between now and then. And, we'd be going through this for the 3rd time now.
I don't see any reason.
So I'm still not sure. Maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, I'm actually really
Come on up.
comfortable with this.
I thought you would be. After I flushed it out.
Thank you for that, and I really appreciate that. You guys are doing a great job. Seriously.
A lot of attorneys in the room, I don't know what.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but what I can say is because we have no intentions of coming back, but to your point, somebody could buy the property, change their minds later, so I get where you're coming from. So as long as we,
Unforeseen reason.
right, and so that I completely understand where you're coming from. I think this is a great compromise, and I'm really comfortable with this, and I appreciate the thought that you put into it, and I believe it does give us the confidence that we need going forward, which is what I like the best about it, and that I've now disclosed it's just going to be a little bit more. Dave's made it clear that that's something you can approve. I think everybody gets the right answer. So thank you very much for your consideration.
So you would be okay with a phase 2 or with
Option 2.
proposal 2?
I think I'm going to consult with your staff member, Dave. Option 2. I don't know the difference between option 2 and option 3, but
We're talking about option 2.
yeah. Okay. So as long as I'm good.
The medium, particularly for the teeny property, the medium density.
And you have 2 weeks, you know, this has got to go to the city council too.
Right.
So if there's some reason that you would change your mind, you could make that known to the city council prior to their approval.
Okay. I appreciate
This
it.
is a recommendation, right?
Yeah. Sorry, yes. The only difference between 2 and 3 is the MTech building.
Right.
Yeah.
Other than that,
That's
you're
what I was trying to understand what the difference was.
Yeah, so right here, the blue is over the MTech, right here. This is option 2. For option 3, it changed it from blue to yellow.
And for what it's worth, whoever said it, I think the right thing is to leave that as mixed use because it's already got existing and they're going to have to do something with that property. And being the adjacent guys were the ones most impacted, I think that's the right answer for their property too. So.
Yep. I also wanted to say that if we compare this meeting to how Del Monte was handled going forward, to the work that the Teeny family and Cody's put into this, it's made. It seems to me that this has went smoother with more feedback and buy-in from the adjacent property owners. So, and that helps me feel comfortable with changing that.
I think it makes sense, especially between commercial and then mixed use, and what will come with mixed use later, and having a medium density, which already with the sloping downhill, there's a natural barrier between the lower density residential, and then to the east, where there's also lower density than the medium density, there's Del Monte Road, and then of course it goes downhill. Del Monte Road is actually inevitably going to be widened to accommodate the additional people. It's closer to the elementary school, closer to commercial, closer to the busy intersection. I totally agree with actually the DRC findings in the staff report for the reasons why option 2 is better. And now that Dave answered my questions the way he did, which pins Cody's development to 8.3, 8.4, and it's not by right in the R3 zone, I'm good.
I think that just to be noted one more time is to make sure that, that there's got to be some way to keep monitoring and seeking solutions for the traffic issues in the area.
I think that is a great point. In fact, we've had to report on that issue before the meeting tonight as well. There's one part of that, so.
One question that doesn't really have to this vote. When you presented before us, there was some concern where you had adjoined with where the storage units are going to be with that property line. Has that been resolved? You've been able to work out how you're going to abut their property?
We don't, but this nice gentleman in the back just introduced himself and handed me his card, said he wants to get together with me, so I'm sure he said he wants to work with us, so I'm sure we can work on that.
I think we have a different perspective on it than before. I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Okay. Ready for recommendation?
Ready? Yep.
Joseph, do you mind if I do this one?
Todd, you got this.
I'm going to butcher it.
Wait, don't butcher it. Don't butcher it. No pressure. There's a lot of pressure.
You're not an
Right,
attorney.
Todd.
Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness. I'd like to make a recommendation that the general plan be amended to option 2 as presented to us tonight. There's nothing else in there, is there?
I'll second that.
Are we recommending this though, rather than?
Recommend. I just said recommend, yeah.
Recommending it.
Okay, we've got a recommendation, a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that recommendation passes.
Ty, who gets the trailer and the stock scales?
The attorney,
Thank you. Honestly, I'm still got lost on option one, so getting good job.
Spanish Fork citizens are good neighbors.
All right, next agenda item are construction standards.
Can I go back to the second half of that with the text? Do you mind if I do that?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I just closed.
So it'll be the document that you just had, yeah. There's another way to get to it if we want to. Like I said, we have the map. That's the change that you just acted on relative to making that change. The text of the general plan. I'll grab my visual aid here.
Oh, you have visual aids?
Fourth tab.
This one? No?
It's not on the board docs.
It's that one. Yep, it's that one.
This one. Okay.
This is that document there. This is a hard copy of it. And we've included a few different things as elements of the general plan with our land use element of the general plan. So this document, it really is fairly broad brush like the map. It is intended to go hand in glove with the map and really to define some of the things that the map describes in more detail. So I'll pass out an excerpt from this in just a minute, but this part of the general plan has been updated a few times in recent years. We've talked quite a bit, I think largely because of the Del Monte project, about the last time it was really overhauled, which was between 2009 and really 2010, but I think it finally got adopted in 2011. So this has a little bit of age to it now, and we continue to talk about perhaps updating the whole thing. I'm not here tonight to suggest that that happen next month or right now, but there's a little bit of tuning up that I think makes some sense. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because frankly I don't think it's a big deal. But for example, one of the things that this document houses is our moderate income housing plan, which is something that Utah law requires us to update every year. You might remember that back in November, I think it was, we presented our 2020 version of that to you. It's usually kind of a perfunctory conversation, but I think it makes sense now to bring our latest version of that into this document. So that's edit number one that I'm suggesting that we make to this as part of a change. Edit number two has to do with simply swapping out the maps that are incorporated into this document with the current land use map of the general plan. Frankly, I don't think we need council action to do that, but that's the other, that's one of the other edits that we're recommending that we make now. And the last one, I'm going to pass these out. Try to keep my distance while I do that. Again, just by way of some excerpt pages.
While you're doing that, Dave,
Yeah.
urban density shows 12 to 18. It has R4 and R5. I think it would need to be 12 to 20.
Oh, thank you.
Because by right,
I forgot
R4
about
and
that.
R20.
Heck. Good catch. That's partly at least what I'm suggesting that we do with those changes. I mean, adding the density ranges, that doesn't change anything, but I think it does clarify what the documents described elsewhere, or in some ways also what's been intended. The additional language that we have to the mixed use designation, the narrative there that describes that designation in terms of outlining a density for that. Also, I think just simply makes it more clear and useful. And then I agree that because after this was last modified, the maximum density that's allowed in the R4 zone went from 18 to 20. It makes sense now to reflect 20
I read the code for
in this document.
I just read it right now.
Yeah.
You guys don't? Wait, I thought that was part of the job. I gotta read the code.
I believe that.
And we're very glad you do.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to ask Brandon, are we missing anything just in terms of pieces that we've talked about? So again, I don't think any of that's terribly consequential, but it makes sense to clean some stuff up, and I think this is a good time to do that.
We don't know yet as far as like the future TDR program or something like that, if that could happen. And if it does, this will get changed again, I'm sure.
I already have a draft change to this document that would accommodate that, yeah. But we're not quite ready. So if you're inclined to take action on those changes, and I apologize, this is coming across as being a little bit unpolished, but it'd be to update the moderate income housing element with the current land use element of the general plan, to modify the text to clarify density and the other things we've talked about, and to update the maps. And I think probably most appropriately, at least ask for any public comment on this if,
On this one.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead and move into public comment. Now's your chance. All right.
Don't rush to the microphone.
Seeing none, we'll move out of public comment. Is anybody clear on the exact motion that you'd make on this?
Would you like to type up a motion that
I
we
could
could-
fumble my way through it.
Oh, good.
Dave, you might have to whisper in my ear. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the changes to the land use map designation in the text, and edit the urban density residential from, instead of 12 to 18, have 12 to 20. That we update the maps in accordance with Dave's suggestion, and we include the moderate income edits as described by Dave in the amendment.
I second that.
That sound good, Dave?
That sounds great. Just
Lucy.
by way of,
It doesn't.
hope this is helpful. We will make all of those changes, and I will send a document to you for you to review in case you want to before this goes to the city council. So if you do have any feedback on it, between now and then, we'll take that to the council as well.
So this is a recommendation for the city council.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so I've got a motion and I've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, we ready for construction standards?
Yeah, except that roundabout on Mill Road.
What?
That was talked about so much as part of the Del Monte Townhomes
Yeah.
proposal.
Yes.
And we have a design now, conceptual design, but I'd love to put Mike on the spot now and just kind of talk you through what that's gonna look like. I think, with the idea that
Sure.
this is in the works, as I understand it, to be built
Thought you were
this
gonna
summer.
say it's not.
We love roundabouts.
You asked about the
I love
traffic.
roundabouts.
We love
And I'll
roundabouts.
tell you, particularly with the teeny property, so as that comes forward, we're gonna be really sensitive to doing everything we can to address the concerns that the neighbors have had about traffic. Frankly, we're probably gonna go way overboard, and I think there's no better time to go way overboard, so, anyway, it's a good time or a bad time to bring that up.
It's
Sure.
sometimes way
Gotta warn you,
over.
but-
I actually thought
Could have done
specifically
construction
today that
standards,
I
then done
wouldn't
it.
talk about how much I love roundabouts in this meeting.
There you go. By the way, Mike.
Don't be
got a
bored to
little
death
attaboy
or
that was well deserved last night.
a what?
Got an attaboy
Oh, really?
in
Oh,
last
good.
night's meeting that was well deserved.
Well, that's nice. I didn't watch that part, I guess. Or I blinked and missed it, I guess.
It went by.
Really quick. Well, that's
See how
good.
boring I am. I watched the city council.
Well, I did too, but I didn't
That's-
Yeah, see, she missed it. It was really quick. She sneezed and it was over.
I was
Yeah.
wrapping ornaments.
Let's go down to the striping one. It's a little better. Striping. There we go.
Oh, that's neat.
I've seen better. Is this your conceptual?
This is 30%.
Okay, all right.
We thought about doing a square, but it wouldn't be a roundabout, it'd be a square about. So
Oh,
Good change.
we did go a circular.
good catch.
So, talk through a few of these things. Obviously, you have these divider islands, so it turns cars going in the right direction. You wouldn't think people go backwards, but you'd be surprised. But the other thing it does is it gets people away from trying to cut the corner. People will still do it, but you see how the curb kind of cuts in a little bit. They start going one direction, back the other. It's pretty typical roundabout design. So the Mill Road section is very typical. The only thing different is this section. We're not building this today. But one day, and according to the general plan as well, this will be residential homes out here. Need the street connectivity. So we have purchased this land, I believe, and this would be curbed today. So you won't be able to just drive off into the weeds over here, but it would be designed in a way that we could extend it pretty easily. So that's pretty straightforward. The 1100 South, there is a bypass lane here, as well as one this way. And the requirement obviously is a little more cost for the curb gutter sidewalk, not the curb gutter, but a little more asphalt. The reason it was put in is for peak demands. It would operate at a level service F if we did a typical one because of the school high peak. So the designers felt like it was worth the cost to put in that slip lane of sorts. So anyone in the roundabout would have the right of way. So there would be a yield sign right here. So you'd pull up, look left. If no one's coming, you just keep on going through. But it will give the ability for two cars to enter simultaneously. One car to go south, and the other one could continue north.
Unless the one on the left decides to try and go right.
Unless they do, which this is a high school driver, then
Or the one on the right.
And they have to quickly merge or hit each other.
Yes.
Because they're both trying to turn right.
yes. I would hope someone in this line wouldn't make the last ditch decision and not look right, but I mean, it will probably happen.
Michael, right? I always get the broken one. I get one that works. So
You can have the laser beam that Brandon had. That thing is bright.
Yeah. So there's signage here. Is it just a yield sign?
Yes.
Is that all? Is there anything here that says you may not turn right here? That you have to go around?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Why do we have 2 right turns here?
They don't. This one's intended to come all the way around.
It's if you want to go right, you have your own lane to go right, and the left turn would be, you would be going south or through.
There's an arrow on that lane that says
Hopefully it doesn't say,
go left.
hopefully it doesn't say like turn left.
So I'm,
Hopefully it's more like go straight.
Yeah, see?
Joseph, I think it's entirely just about the anticipated volume. You're gonna have so many people that wanna exit ALA at the same time and go either north or south, that this is intended just to clear out as much of that.
I get it. Okay, so
Is
volume.
that my?
So without it, the queue would be
Yeah.
like 2.5 times. It significantly decreases that time frame. I was saying like 33 seconds. Anyway, there's a whole study that was done on why that slip lane was needed. We could go over it, but we don't want everyone to fall asleep.
And then,
Yeah,
Michael,
it takes some people a little time to get used to figure it out, but I'm sure you'll get a few accidents with people not knowing what
Getting
they're
used
doing.
to it.
Do you dare not put a left turn arrow right there? 'Cause
Left turn only.
They come through here. I mean,
Um,
that'd be crazy, but I bet it'll happen.
But
I'm just saying. Spanish forkers and roundabouts, it's kind of a new thing right now. for all.
the people,
hey, I had the thought. At one point,
It is
computers were
Spanish
really
forkers,
new.
right? It is Spanish forkers, or are we Spanish forkanians?
Forkians.
Forkians. Okay, yes.
I think that enough people get there, the few mistakes will happen, and then you figure it out real fast. It's great.
Michael, is this a clear sight triangle to this point? I guess you are.
Yeah.
That fence isn't is intending that the cars would be here. I just want to make sure we have a clear line of sight. From
So they can come around and see there. I agree. So this fence is existing, so it is a pretty limited section. Yeah, this would be no trees, nothing be put here. But you're right, that is a limitation of where it's at right at this point. Another thing along those lines, I thought this is what you're going to bring up, but this is a pretty tight turn. If you can tell, this is not a north-south
I
road
was gonna ask you, what's the width?
intersect. So the width is good.
I like playing engineer. Can we keep talking about that? Just kidding.
The width, we can do that. But if you're pulling a trailer to make it around the corner without demolishing this rock every single time, so they're going to run auto turn on it, and show how it can work from any direction, turning in any direction. I think it's too sharp. I don't know. Pulling a trailer.
If you've got a trailer, could you just enter the roundabout? And come
Yeah, you could go a full circle and then come back around. Most people won't try that. They'll just go up and over. So we'd probably say to cut this off right here. So you do have a little more option to take a swing and get around it. Another option is to make this planter smaller. Another option, if there is a site triangle when they run this auto turn, and we'll look at that as well, Todd, more in depth, is to purchase the property on this corner. We obviously do not want to do that, but if you have a kid waiting to cross and someone can't see them till the last second, I mean, they should be going 15 or less, so your stop sight distance should be, you know, it shouldn't be huge going that speed, but should is not a great word when talking about drivers.
Talking about new teenager drivers.
Yeah.
I think that'll help out a lot. I like that.
That looks really nice.
Yeah, it takes the double entryway, takes it from a low service F to a C, which is pretty significant in your wait times.
Well, and I like the idea that the city has gone ahead and taken the initiative to get this done.
Yeah.
You know, that was a big thing with everything that we had a few months ago, you know, that people weren't listening to what they wanted, and there were concerns about safety. This is huge, I think.
From the roundabout that you had before to this, that's a huge cost increase in material you have in there. So that's, I mean, that's responding to their complaints.
Well, this, have you got any kind of drawings or plans yet? You were talking about having some of those on the turn lanes into and out of ALA.
Yeah. Yep, we'll hop to that. That's another sheet. Arrive Homes was also in agreement, and they were required from their approvals to contribute to the roundabout, and they have signed that agreement. And so the half of the funds, well, less than half of the funds will come from them.
Good.
So that does help with that cost. And most of the cost of a roundabout, especially a retrofit, is land purchase, because sometimes it includes a building that's sitting on that land. Where this case it is grass in that corner up here where we are doing this. Where if we had to have the slip lane here, you're buying a house that obviously is significantly more expensive. So that was one positive to this design that was good. So let's go back to the turn lanes. I think the striping's back here though.
Well, you're getting there, Mike, this would
There
be
you go.
built this summer, is that right?
Yes, before the next school year.
Good deal.
So also kind of relative to the timing, we approved the Del Monte townhomes today. They may start construction then in February.
Dirt is already being moved. They haven't started official construction, but they're cleaning up debris.
But I think there's no way that they'll have any homes occupied there before this is done.
And another thing about that roundabout is the plans to go west from this roundabout ought to help the developer that will be building homes to the west of there. But I would imagine that can't be done until we get some work finished on the sewer lift station. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, nothing can happen there until that's done.
So that was approved, and they've already had their plans approved for permit? So you're,
Just the flat and the horizontal
okay.
stuff was approved today. So
Are
they
they-
can start on that. They could maybe be building vertically in practically 4 months.
They doing any cleanup between them and the homeowners to the west, that property that Amtech owns?
I don't think so.
That's just.
They're just the property they're on.
It's MTech's land.
But they're also not gonna be pushing anything into that, right?
Well, another good thing about this that is a little different is they're doing it all in one phase.
Yeah.
So there's not a phase 1 and then phase 2 next year, phase 3 the next year. They're building it all once, which really makes it cohesive. They're in, they're out. Homeowners aren't dealing with construction for 3 or 4 years, so that was a positive as well.
And there's not a roundabout over at Del Monte.
That's what they're doing.
11
No. Again, we want to push to Mill Road a little bit more, but obviously they can go to either. But this would make it, again, they have the option of going back, so back to your median question here. So if you come to enter, this median will actually be cut short. It'll be cut right here. This median will not be here on the west because, you know, this person expressed in our meetings, he has trailers that he backs up, and trying to back up with a median in the middle of the road's a little tough, so. And we didn't need it. I mean, if you put a median to right here, you're not gonna come oncoming traffic for 50 feet. I mean, someone will do it, but, yeah, right? Yeah, so the idea is if you came from Mill Road, you'd come here, turn left into the parking lot. The whole parking lot would be set up for a entry from the east, exit on the west. So as you can see, this is a double lane out. And then they can either come down and circle around the roundabout and come back on 1100. But that'd be the only way they would be able to get from the school parking lot to Del Monte, is doing that loop. The idea is they go to Mill Road and then either go right on that slip lane, go left normally around the roundabout and exit that way, or they can U-turn and head back on 1100.
So this is going to direct much more people down to Mill Road and taking a right.
Correct.
To go past the mill, then probably back up past Riverview in the ballpark.
Yeah.
The next traffic discussion we'll have is about Mill Road and Pike.
Yes.
I always go left. I drop off my kids there every morning. I'm there 1100 south to the west.
You go down Mill Road.
South on Mill Road and turn right to go out to I-15.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of people will do that. A lot of parents like me.
Yep. So instead of when you get a stop sign, you're only competing against people who go left, and you don't have to stop unless there's someone coming on Mill Road. So it should move it pretty well.
Thank you.
So your question on Del Monte, then the next, I'll spend about 20 seconds as soon as I turn off the zoning. With that fellow that was in here about the Tingy property, is long straight roads really struggle with speeds. And with a school at the end and kids being late from lunch or to school or trying to get home, it's obviously a speedway that, you know, could definitely happen. Now, there aren't any driveways onto Del Monte. There is a few on this side, but on Mill Road, there's a few, but there's not a lot of driveways, so the backing up or those conflicts really won't be there a lot, but it's still high speed, still kids walking on the sides, crossing roads. So part of the approval of the Tingy property we'll discuss going forward is maybe having some sort of traffic calming, maybe at their north entrance. Not a roundabout, but something where the road kind of narrows. There's visually I should probably slow down feel to it. Maybe even do two of them. I don't know where, but that north entrance was one that I thought would be good.
Something like you did on 4th East with the cones.
Something like that. Maybe on the hillside over here. Maybe have the curb kick out and go on, you know, kind of an arch around so the lanes actually shift slightly with the striping. So they feel like, hey, there's something in the road. I need to slow down. We have a couple options, but I think that's something with this development that would be particularly helpful.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
As you scroll, let's see, where are we? Scroll a little bit. So I'm not well versed on the crosswalk options, but I've seen little kids stranded on this side of the road while it's drop-off time, and they just can't safely cross right there. I imagine with the townhomes coming in and more residences, it's going to get worse. So it is a problem going across here and then going across here, because all the kids then, of course, they're safe once they get here because they walk right in. But I'm just wondering if there's some sort of crosswalk only, like some signal with like flashing lights that it's the walk time, or I don't know what options there are. I'm just making you aware of it.
For sure.
Because they don't cross up at West Park Drive, they just come up the sidewalk.
Well, there's a crosswalk here. Is there not a crossing guard that stops traffic?
There's not a crossing guard. The crossing guard is only here.
Only this
So
one.
go up to West Park Drive, just north of the church. They could cross right there and then come up that side of the sidewalk. But that's teaching kids where to cross. Because it's this four-way stop sign. It'd be
My
safer
guess
to
is they're
cross
coming
there.
out of
Or are they
this
coming out of Quail Hollow and down?
The great part is should be able to get across. I don't know if this is a great spot, but there would be a trail the whole west side of this. So if, with these guys going in, Tingy property going in, and this one, there'll be a trail that whole side.
But then crossing here is gonna be a problem.
Crossing Del
But,
Monte.
well, but they could come down here and use the crossing guard
True.
down there.
Yeah, good
Will they? I don't know.
There's a sidewalk there, isn't there?
Michael,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
have we ever looked at, like, what Joseph's just brought out, and a lot of other cities I see where you have the yellow flashing lights, somebody will hit it, it flashes for 15 seconds while they cross the street.
Yeah, we just
Have
put
you ever
one,
looked-
On
Do we have those?
volunteer.
Thank you. I had no idea what I was.
the
Yes,
RFB
that.
is what they're called.
I'd
Have
recommend
one
RFB.
volunteer?
like that goes there.
Thought we had one on volunteer.
We have probably 15 of them in town, but yeah, you're right. We put them in spots like this.
There's one.
They're good.
There's one at the top of Center Street for the junior high kids we put in about a
There's
month
one
ago.
on that right there, right where the trail crosses.
I'd like to
What-
make-
There's, yeah, there's one right here.
Parker Lane for the trail
Yeah, right.
in the river bottoms.
Right.
I
Yeah,
use
those
that
are
trail all
great.
the time, I've never noticed.
And that's not there right now in
It's
2012.
not there, look.
Hey, well, look at the image date. Some of us had more hair or gray hair, you know.
But it is there now.
There comes my buddy right there.
Yeah, let's belay that point, Dave. Let's go.
I suggest you continue the construction.
All right. I'm saying that's 9 years ago. That's a long time.
It's just yesterday.
I just wonder, yeah, anyway, I bring
Anyway,
it up all
there's
the
one there.
time too.
Don't we
that
have some
road coming
construction
up out of
standards to get to?
Riverway.
Yeah, we can get to those. Anyway, they aren't overly expensive. And so I think areas to, I mean, overly expensive, they're less than 5,000, but they're still a couple $1,000. More expensive than stop signs. But finding the right application for them, because we can't put them everywhere. But I think this is a good spot to look at it, for sure.
Cheaper than a crossing guard.
Yeah.
So.
And it brings awareness for cars coming from clear back here that, oh, hey, I'm entering a school zone. Visitors to the area, it really does help. And I like that better than the ones that slow them down to 20 or ones that's just because then you have to, it's not kid specific, it's just flashing the whole
Always on.
time.
Yep.
So for an area like this, I think it's a great thing.
So are you saying that if that goes in there, I can report to my wife that because of this meeting, I may have a chance of saving a kid's life, maybe, possibly?
For sure, you can claim you did.
Okay, well, I'll claim I did. Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. All right, good.
You're an attorney.
Yeah, I'll sell that. I'll sell that.
That means you can do
I'm
it.
hearing
right?
countless lives.
Countless.
Unquantifiable.
Here's the question is, who needs to put in the application, or is it like now the planning commission says, we would really love it if you would do that? I
We'll
make a
instruct-
motion.
Let's instruct Dave to get a hold of the safety. Is that Chris Thompson?
It's more Mike's thing. They
Mike?
get Together, yeah.
There we go.
We have a traffic safety committee and we
They
have warrants to
safety
just,
meetings.
we do,
I like it.
once
All
a
right.
month.
We have done it. then.
With the
I've never been
police,
invited.
the fire, the safety guys.
Construction
Streets guys.
standards.
Thank you,
Policy.
thank you.
Nice work. I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
Hey, I don't even have to go through these if you want to go fast. All right. I just went through these today with my inspectors, so should be pretty quick. First one is more planning related. When a subdivision is going in that's not next to a already well-developed part of town, if you can think of like the Annie's Acres. Now that one is relatively close, but you have to do some off-site to get there. We had some limitations on like, hey, you can't just build thousands of houses with one 8-inch water line. We need to have some looping. It really helps with fire flow. And so for the different utilities, this helps us further define what that is. So like pressure swings, fire flow minimums, that kind of stuff. So
So will this affect the subdivision that's going to go in southeast of me?
Not if
That will loop onto my road, I would imagine.
we would require them to loop it on that one for sure.
I think that was part of their plan,
It was part of the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
was to loop that.
I guess think about like you know where the new lift station's going out by Revere.
Huh?
In between that spot and Old Mill Estates, there's no development interest right there, at least right now. But west of of that, there's lots of interest, more close to the interchange. Well, there's a big gap, and they're like, well, I'm only going to build 20 units, so I don't need to loop it, right? Well, this guy wants to build 20, and this guy wants to build 20, and this guy wants a park. And at what point do we make them group together and loop 8,000 feet of water line? And so this is kind of help the guy.
Well, isn't it true that you're looped on every city block within the old part of town?
Yeah.
Every intersection.
2 points of entry. So if one line breaks, can you service it from another way?
Would we dictate to them that they'd have to have a booster pump on the fire or the domestic in that situation, even if wouldn't it be a choice between you're either going to get a booster pump on this or you're going to loop it? Because they have to meet the pressures.
Right. The pressures would be more redundancy than the booster, because the booster, if the line breaks, it's not useful. So we want to have that dual way for the wire to get there. Anyway, that's that one. Any questions? I don't want to go slow here, so.
I have one question.
Oh.
As I read through that, water quality, has that been a problem?
No.
Or is it on a dead-end line?
Usually it's if someone builds a building, very, very low use or intermittent use, and you have a long wire line, it gets nasty.
Stagnant.
We had a church building in Idaho that was, I think, 1,500 feet of dead-end line, and they just turned off the drink fountains because no one used them, because they were bad.
Looks good.
Next one is fleshing out and combining our excavation permits. So if someone wants to do work in the right of way, we say you need a permit. We don't want anyone just cutting it anytime they want. So we make sure they're licensed, insured. We have them post a bond and then pay an inspection fee for our guys to go out and to test and look at the installation. This was in like 3 places, and each one had mildly different requirements. So we took all 3, combined them, went through with the entire Public Works, making sure we were covered with what their needs were and what they've seen. But yeah, basically it just walks through what's required. The main thing that this combination added, if I can get down here, is this section. Says that if they bury an item without us looking at it, they have to dig it up. Seems common sense, but we have it happen all the time. And so they need to dig it up. The other one is trenches. We don't want any open trenches at any point. It has to be plated. If it's going to snow, then they have to either backfill it if it's on a minor road with fill, or they need to asphalt it if it's a collector arterial. Again, this helps them plan better. We're not trying to be mean. It's if you see snow forecast, don't start tonight because it's going to snow all day tomorrow. We got to plow. That's not good planning. Wait till after it snows and then do it. So you wouldn't think that'd be a big problem, but it happens all the time. Next one is communication plan. So part of when they get a pre-construction meeting and they start construction is, do you need to close down traffic? Like, do you need to close a road? What water lines are you putting in? When they get to a point where they're ready to do this and shut down a road, if you ever heard of South Lane, and the road was gone for a while, this gives us the ability to put some teeth and some requirements into how and what they do, so we have a much better public outreach. And it keeps the contractor on a tighter time frame. So the requirements are you have to hire a public involvement firm unless this public works director says you don't have to. Now, we would be the ones hiring and they would pay us back, so they don't just get to hire their brother who, whatever. Like we have a reputable firm that will help us do this. And this isn't every project. If they're building out in the field and whatever, we're not going to have a public involvement firm for something like that. But if it's Center Street, and they got to cut a big old wire line across it, yeah, we got to have a firm that's going to go out and contact people, have the start date, the end date, just all the information. So if there's problems, dirt, debris, like that, there's a number they can call instead of calling the mayor or, there's a person who's very involved with the project that has their number very visible for everyone. So they notify all these different people as part of that when there's a road shut down, so you don't have a school bus heading down a dead-end road. That's not really dead end, but it is because it's closed. Dispatch for emergency response, garbage. The next thing is a fee for shutting down a road. Again, we're not looking to make money on this, but money talks, especially when you try to shut down a road. People love shutting down a road on construction because
It's fun.
it's my project. I'll be back next week. Why would I hurry up? But to the residents, it's a huge deal. So this is the rate per 1,000 feet per lane. So if you close South Lane, a local road, for 1,000 feet, just to make the math easy, for, I won't tell you how long it was closed, but a long time. Let's say 30 days for a shorter amount of time. It'd be, and it was both lanes, so that'd be $200, because that's one lane in each direction. So $200 a day for 30 days. Now,
Where'd you come up with those numbers?
we looked at like 7 cities that do it, and we,
You took, what, an average, the low?
we talked to a few contractors, we talked to a few public works guys, and it was more on the mid to lower range. Some of them were crazy.
It's fun. I see worse than that all the time.
You didn't like check San Francisco.
Yeah.
Prior-
You just, yes.
Okay.
Pleasant Grove, Provo,
Great.
American
Prior to
Fork.
this, there were no fees being
No.
given to anybody for road closures. This is good. This will
I'm,
be
I'm happy that the sidewalk bike lane trail is there. That's awesome.
We have hundreds of feet a year that is just left, and they walk away. And are you going to come back? And so then we're stuck. We usually have some money to go fix it, but it's been closed then for a month or two. So a little farther up, we put some timelines saying, hey, if you get an excavation permit, we're putting a timer on 30 days. If you haven't done it in 30 days, we're going to close it and go fix it, or we'll just refund the money if you never started. But we have some closing time, so they have to reapply.
Did the road past Annie's Acres have anything to do with?
100%,
They
because
were closed for months.
I was asked to do something, but I'm like, I can't do anything.
No, but you will be.
They're like, yeah, we'll be done next
Next
week.
time.
And then they weren't done next week. Okay, well, when are you going to be done? No, next week. And where this way, they're on the clock. Guess who's going to be in and out? There's less issues of safety, people getting into the trenches, better quality products because they're just moving A to B to C.
I do have a question about that, though, in defense of those guys. They hit some quicksand type material in there that they had no idea it was going to be that bad. There hadn't been a lot of excavation in that area before. You know, the basements, there's hardly any basements in the area because it's so wet, but they got in there and had a real difficult situation.
The sides
Yeah.
caved in faster than they could dig in some of the spots.
Did they not do
Probably should have had a geotech
Yeah,
report.
they didn't do a geotech?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Not in the
I
road.
can't tell you on that. The road's
Boring.
not,
Still, look.
and it's such a narrow road and everything, the whole road just sloughed into the hole. And they
Yeah.
had a heck of a time because there was only one way in and one way out, so they couldn't bring trucks in one after another and fill it. They had to back a guy down a quarter of a mile, dump him, get him out before the next one could come in. It was a bad deal, but like you're saying, there ought to be some due diligence on what you're gonna run into if you're gonna dig 8 feet deep or you're gonna dig 12 feet deep or whatever it may be. You know, they need to go and pothole that next to the road and find out what they may or may not have and go from there. And you know, if you've got this fee, they may, you know, it's just gonna cost them more.
Yeah. And if they know it going into it, hey, I got to close this road, it's going to cost me so much per day. Okay, I'm going to line up all my guys, I'm going to line up all the materials so I can be in and out and done quick. I might do a geotech just to make sure I know what I'm getting into. Where before I feel like it was more of I'll just put road closed signs and I can do the work when I have extra time. I'll just get in, I'll do whatever, I'll build this part of the curb somewhere else. And so I feel like it'll have a little more attention to it than we've gotten in the past.
I think the River Bottoms people felt like that's what was happening with them there. They just weren't getting anything very fast.
Yeah. And a lot of it we do put in here for the discretion of the Public Works Director. There are situations where maybe the road has to be closed because of some unforeseen event. We're not going to punish a contractor for taking the time to do it right or different things. So the fee can be waived or reduced based on circumstance. It's not a hard line. But in general, this is where we landed. Any questions on that?
What about traffic control plans? Is that
Yeah,
part of the
that's up
public
here.
outreach?
Yeah, that's up here.
Okay.
This whole section is that.
Okay.
Yep, they have to submit one before we would allow them to, so they have to submit one, they have to have their public involvement ready to go, they have to do a couple of things, and then we'll say, now you can go. But we have to give notice 5 days before the work and then 4 to 8 hours before the work. Whether it's a door hanger or an email, but they have to make contact. And that's where contractors, I had this, well, did you contact them? Well, I knocked on their door.
Yeah.
Well, when did you go? At 2 p.m. Well, no kidding, they weren't home. Did you leave a door hanger? No, I tried to contact them. So we have a third party that we are under contract with that will, I think, do a much better job.
That's great.
We'll jump to the next one. If you have anything else, you can let me know. There's an LID requirement we have, and it was never defined by the state or us on what if you redevelop? What if it's an old building and you redevelop? Well, technically it is development, so do you make them do low impact development? So there's an architecture firm that put in their office by Zions Bank, and they didn't change a thing other than they demolished the building and rebuilt it. And so our requirement was, you got to put LID in. They're like, well, where are we going to put it? Why don't we just let it do what it did before? So it got us thinking, there's got to be some mild amount that we could say, well, if it's under that, it's basically the same building. And so looking at a few other examples of ones like that, 20% seemed like a good number there. Got rid of non-reinforced concrete pipe for storm drain. Got rid of PVC and polyethylene pipe, inferior products to the polypropylene. This is what everyone's installing because concrete pipe is really backed up. But so basically sewer and storm drain are the same quality of pipe, except for we don't use concrete with sewer. But anyway, so I have a couple options there. We have a dark sky initiative. Annie's Acres was the first one to do it, incorporating that into the rest of the city for new development and replacement projects.
Have they got very many in yet down at Annie's Acres? Not yet.
Very many lights.
Very many lights. Yeah.
Pretty sure they are.
Dozen.
Yeah. So you can go down and look at them.
Check them out, see how they look.
Oh, yeah.
They look different.
You could notice, you would notice the difference.
So cannot broadcast light above 180 degrees from the parallel ground surface. So it will shine out but not up. So kind of cool.
They look pretty good.
Some PRV for pressure reducing stations. You don't need to see. The last one is, sorry, it's sideways. Can't really see it that well, but basically when you go around a turn, we kind of talked about this on that roundabout. You don't want your trailer or something to drag on the curb, hit the curb or anything. And did a couple driving tests, we'll call it. Had a couple contractors and our guys at the shops drive certain spots, and I think our curves are a little too sharp. Not enough give to make the turn from a normal painted lane to where you need to get to. So we increased the radius by 5 feet, kind of smooths that out, less sharp.
School buses may appreciate that.
Yeah, the corner by Lowe's and Hobby Lobby, that area right there, that intersection was the one we drove it on. It met it, but it was not good. It was too tight.
That has a center.
Median on it.
Center median.
Yep, so you have a lot of swing to get in back into it. And so here, if we do the 5 feet, even if there is a median or not a median, you should still be able to make it. So that's all of them.
Looks good. Any questions for Mike? If not, I would entertain a motion.
As silly as this sounds, public hearing real quick.
Oh, is it for construction standards?
Brandon has a lot to argue.
Okay, we'll move into public hearing.
Second chance, last chance.
Tracy? I'm
All right, we'll move out of public hearing. Any additional comment or motion?
Is this to pass these or to recommend?
I think we recommend these to
another one.
So.
And I would make that
There's a
motion.
motion on the cover sheet, Mike, if you want to pull it up.
Oh, let me find it.
I was just looking for the cover sheet.
We don't have a.
Oh, I just closed it.
It was on the board docs.
I know, I'm looking for it. So recommended action.
This one?
Then I would make a recommendation that, or I would make a motion that we recommend to the city council that we approve the changes in the construction standards.
Second.
Got a motion, I've got 2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And 2 final discussion items. Dave, the intersection and master plan developments.
Yeah, thanks. I just sprung something on Mike, so I'm going to go a little out of order here. We've talked about changing the master plan development ordinance, particularly because of a density concern. What we'd like to do is couple that with a few other changes and bring those back to you guys in February. So I just am going to pass this out as the latest rendition of changes that would hopefully make that happen the way that you'd like to see it happen. For most of what we have here, well, most of this is more background than any part of the proposed changes. So that's kind of an FYI for tonight. We'd like to have a public hearing in February on those changes. We have a couple of other things that I would kind of call clerical, sort of like with the general plan text change that I talked about earlier tonight that we'd like to bring forward. And we'll be bringing forward a proposal. In fact, this is something I'd like to take some time to talk about in your work meeting later this month. Public outreach. This is going back to something that we talked about months ago. In essence, and you wouldn't have to look at it this way, but I think really we're talking about a replacement for the neighborhood meeting, or just better ways to engage residents around developments and that type of thing than what we have today, hoping to be more successful than we've been with the neighborhood meeting kind of format that right now is required. So for tonight, I really don't have much more to say about any of those things than just to offer that as an FYI. But in the meantime, between now and either your next meeting or the work session, feel free to reach out if you have any suggestions or questions about anything there.
Could you send us a digital copy of this too?
You bet. I can. Yeah, certainly. Certainly I'll do that. So,
In the 2 Gage Canyon and Myth Mountain Estates you used in this,
yep.
it was picked because one's well over and one's under, or were they just random ones, or
I picked-
how'd you come about those 2 examples?
That's a great question. I picked Gage Canyon because it was kind of the one that brought this to our attention. So we started with that one for that reason, and picked the other one to try to just really blindly pick one that I thought was representative of probably the norm. They're different in that Gage Canyon's one of the few projects.
Gage Canyon had those big corners that upped the lot size.
And it's also the R19 zone, I think, whereas the vast majority of master plan developments that have been approved have been the R112 zone. So that it was important to look at those, at the other one, because it has that other zoning, just to see to see how much of an anomaly maybe Gage Canyon really is. We've talked to a handful of developers about this, and they don't love it. Yeah, but
I thought they'd back this.
they're prepared to do what they need to do to comply. Of course, they won't necessarily have a choice. You will see one project come forward, at least asking to be approved under the current rules, which they have the right to ask. But kind of back to some of the things that Commissioner Ernest brought up earlier tonight. Ultimately, the City Council has quite a bit of discretion as to whether or not a master plan development gets approved, and what that looks like and that sort of a thing. So that's discussion that'll happen on another occasion. Right now, the proposal leaves out the last thing we talked about
on the subject, which is, should we include provisions, kind of the quid pro quo park space for, smaller lots and that type of a thing. I appreciated this, that one of the things that we talked about with you was the idea that potentially doing that would save Spanish Fork City some money if a developer's willing to give park space in exchange for getting, in essence, density rather than to sell park space to the city. And our Parks Department's very supportive of the idea that we could buy it, and they're standing by that. The idea that our impact fee is set up with a component that will fund the purchase of future park space. And they when I say they, Dale Robinson, the director, has said that's, in his opinion, the right way to handle it. So
they're comfortable with buying it outright rather than having the developers put it in.
Right.
I like that.
What, but what's his reasoning for saying that? Is it because they're not getting the best choice of land that they'd want to use, the developers are giving them? Is it, what's the reasoning behind that?
I think it's that, and also just, and I wish he could speak for himself, but maybe this is his bias, but wanting to see more neighborhoods with bigger lots. He expressly said that. So.
But I'll also put some in the driver's seat, 'cause unless you have a Legacy Farms where you can absorb a 9-acre park, you can program, you can do that. All you end up with are pocket parks. And then you still have to buy the big park to have more soccer fields and football fields anyway. And then you have the maintenance of all these tiny parks everywhere. So I think the Legacy Farms one is where he kind of got the idea of, hey, unless we're not going to get these 800 home subdivisions very much like Legacy Farms, why don't we just collect that money and we'll go to like Power Park or some of these other ones, and we'll just buy it, get the one we want, where we want it in town, and then they can develop around us.
That makes sense.
So, frankly, I doubt that we'll see much more change before this is presented in a public hearing here soon. But certainly, if you have any suggestions or questions, anything that you want to talk about.
What's the staff's feelings about, the proposal tonight on the larger lots? That's not been common in my couple of years here. If these lots sell as quickly as the lots around them, could that be a sign that more developers will go that way? Right now, there's a shortage of lots anyway, especially, a little bit larger lot. And so maybe they will see the value of selling fewer lots but larger lots. Or are they still hammering on us for?
I'll just share my experience recently. And I'll say this as well. I think developers would take density every time they could get it. But I also think that the market today is strong enough for the types of homes that people can fit on particularly a wider lot that Vincent Ridge, which we've gone from approving phase A to now B and C, at the same time.
And they're buying multiple lots.
And that's funny too. I mean, even in the developments where we see the largest lots in the community, people are buying 2 lots and combining them. And Mike's been more involved with this than I have been. All of the space between Maple Mountain Estates, that's first south, the road that runs just south of the high school, down to what we call Quiet Valley, the property Joseph mentioned earlier tonight, that's planned to be zoned R115, bigger lots. There's a lot of infrastructure that's going to be installed through that area this next year that's going to make that all developable. And an agreement got approved last night by the city council to where a number of property owners, I think all of which have an interest in developing in the area, are going to participate in getting that infrastructure installed. And they all understand that it's going to be 2 units to the acre. It's going to be 15,000 square foot lots. And they're writing out checks now to make that happen. So that's what I'm going off of, and it surprises me.
And sorry to interrupt, but I talked to this gentleman today, this north one, the first leg of this, it's Park Estates. It's already approved, they want to get started. And it's got ditches on both sides, it's got to have a wall, he's got to improve 100 South, he's got to put in some, maybe, there's quite a bit. And I said, so when are you going to start phase 2? Because we need that for your last leg here. He's like, oh, we're based on the market today, I'm going to submit that to you next week. And he hasn't even started the first phase. And these are third acre lots.
Yes.
So,
They're moving.
and he's he doesn't risk much. I guess we'll put that, they look at every dollar and they're ready to move that quick. So I thought that was interesting from today's conversation.
And of course, things could change fast, but I think that's just how the market is today. And particularly, we're talking about a product that doesn't exist. You know, at least not in Spanish Fork, but you know, it's hard to find even now in neighboring communities. So that just supply and demand.
So one question that I have in regard to that, right across the railroad tracks and the highway towards the edge of Mapleton there, they are in the process now of developing that. And
In
I have
Mapleton?
Yeah, I have no idea the size of the lots or what.
We need to reach out.
I'm certain that it's domestic, it's not, you know,
It's residential.
nobody wants commercial there.
Yeah.
But it's a large area, it's probably 40 acres.
I think we should talk to, maybe I've had several people ask me what's going on over there, and
I don't know.
it's a good reason
They've
for
done
us
a lot of
to.
work there, you know, along there, and it looks like they've taken all the services
Where are
down
you
the highway rather
talking
than.
about right here? Where are you talking about?
Yes,
Right in this area?
right in that area, or right up to the house there.
Do you know anything?
And then
with
back up,
Thing is, I think they
yeah,
have-
all of that,
But I've since forgotten what they're gonna do.
Okay.
and it goes right up, it's just in that area right there.
Just on the Mapleton side.
They're taking that whole thing.
There's a lot of development potential over there with the Ensign Bickford property and everything else, so.
The stuff that's east of there now, up in that area, Joseph and I were talking,
Yeah.
it's just, and those others that are in, yeah. Well,
Yeah, see what happens.
now, we don't have that kind of topography that allows those kinds of things, but up in that area that is just north of what was Trojan Powder, and up in there, they've got, my word, they are some beautiful lots in there, and we just don't have that.
Yeah.
Well, in your neighborhood, but
Yeah.
pretty limited supply. Anyway, relative to what we'd like to have a hearing on, those are the things that we'd like to focus on. And I'll come back to one of those in just a minute. And I don't need to spend a lot of time on this next item, but back on that last email that I sent you.
Yep.
There is, with the different images, there's a
Okay.
video.
There's one right here.
This takes 2 minutes to run.
Real quick,
Yeah,
Dave, before
thanks.
you get into that. So I appreciate the staff coming up with this because this has been huge for all of us for a very long time, So I want to.
And it wasn't necessarily what the staff was thinking, but it's
Yeah.
went with what we're recommending. That's really cool.
So thank you.
I think it's a
you for
great
the work
step,
that you
certainly.
Put into that.
I appreciate you guys.
And you've done your job for a long time. How do you feel about the changes that are in here?
I have no reservations at all. None. I think it makes perfect sense. I really do.
Yeah, good.
You've seen this before, so I'm just going to let it run while I talk about a couple of things, and I do have an ask at the end. This is sort of the final work product on a vision project that we had done by way of an update. We're super excited to learn that with the 2700 North interchange that we think will be under construction, that is right there, under construction early next year, finished 2024. Incidentally, this is I-15 southbound. This is 2700 North. Main Street's over there. Building that Comena's building is just kind of off of the image a little bit to the north there. This is actually Tim Daly's right here. This is potentially another building that could be built to the north of that. We're talking about land that's entirely vacant today. A lot of this is vacant. This is CSB Nutrition there. This project is all about, hey, what could this be? And it's beyond just a dream, but this is an informed vision of what the area could accommodate. I think it goes beyond that, and that I think this is an informed vision of what the area should accommodate, and that's going to tie into my ask in a minute. So, Mike, if you want to just let that run, I don't know if you stopped it or if it did it
Yeah,
automatically.
no, I did. You were talking about
Incidentally, so I'm gonna have to keep getting my bearings here. So
2700 going west.
that's right, 27 North.
Right.
So Main Street's over.
Right.
the CSB here.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep. So this is Capstone, the box plant, city shops and so forth over there. So car dealerships. And so by way of a tool, this is then the tool that we use not only when we talk about trying to get the dealers that we have in town now to expand, but also the idea that, or you know, the
That's
effort.
That's a very upscale business park. I mean, it looks
Very.
nice.
On that comment, you know, this is a new interchange. We're talking about a $30 million investment for the interchange, another $30 million for a bridge to go over the tracks that are east of I-15, which up until just a couple of weeks ago wasn't going to be a part of the project, but the legislature has funded that. That's the update that
Oh, wow.
happy to give.
Wow, that's great.
Really drive right over the tracks. You're saying they're going to bridge
So
it?
it will no longer be an at-grade crossing. It'll be an overpass, and it will be done
It is on
with
400 south.
the interchange, exactly, yeah. This is a big deal. So this should be, in my view, the land uses surrounding it should match the investment that the state's making. We've been, I will say, begging for this for a decade, you know, really since the I-Corps project, and an interchange wasn't included with that. We've done, and when I say we, it's not so much me, but you know, our mayors, from Mayor Anderson, Mayor Leifson, they've worked hard to make this happen and to keep this at the forefront of not only the people at UDOT's minds, but probably just as importantly, our legislators' minds, and they've come through. So it has the opportunity to be a tremendous benefit to the community in a lot of different ways. First and foremost, this will help alleviate traffic issues that otherwise really you can't do much with all along the US Highway 6 corridor. This will take trips from that in different ways and make intersections like the US Highway 6 and 6th East intersection work better, along with the US Highway 6 8th East intersection work better, and so forth. You know, and again, there just are only so many different ways to alleviate the kind of congestion that we know is inevitable along there. So, but again, as a marketing tool for the city to be able to talk to people about, you know, what could be there. You guys have seen the areas that we're talking about. This does not have a country club factor to it at all today, right? I mean, this is ugly space, to be blunt. It shouldn't be. And going forward, I don't think it will be. And that's really what this is about. So, Mike, I'll probably talk less so we can get through this last minute and a half. But
Comina's already
Comanus,
committed to the development on the north of it.
they've started their first
Yeah.
building, you know,
Yeah.
in essence,
Yeah.
which is this one. Yeah.
What's the company?
Colmena. They build really, really big warehouse and distribution developments. And they have 80 acres here that they're working on. They probably don't want me to tell you what they plan to spend on their first phase, so I won't, but it's millions and millions of dollars. It'll be the most expensive project that we've seen here from a construction standpoint, and probably ever, in fact. Probably cost more than Western Distribution did when it was built. So it's a big deal. And part of why they are making that investment is the understanding that the interchange is forthcoming. We'll just let you keep rolling there, Mike.
He's talking. I don't want it to, flash away from me. Takes about a minute to get bearings. It's tough.
Yeah, I think now we're still over on the same side. So now looking to the south, There are some height restrictions that come into play because of the airport, but what we're seeing, these different images, it all could work. Now we are over onto the other side, which frankly, for different reasons, all but the property on the east side of I-15 that abuts 2700 North right on the north. So here we're seeing Spanish Fork Parkway coming up from the south to the north. So this is 2700 North, so the interchange is right over here. This is the railroad tracks. This vision suggests that the frontage along 2700 North should be developed non-residentially. Seems like hard to argue with that, and I certainly concur.
What about this? Why are we, in the last plan I saw, this is residential, right?
Yes.
That's like single family.
Right.
Are we sure about that?
Sure that that's not the best thing. I mean that. And so this is, take this for what it's worth as well. We could pay these folks a certain amount of money to get them to make tweaks like that, or not. And at this point in time, the idea simply
The master
being,
plan, you're just showing the
right, that for various reasons, there probably is not the same potential for non-residential development in the area, and we'll look at it from a different perspective in a minute, on the east side of I-15, between really the hospital and 2700 North, as what we have on the west. So,
Wouldn't this be a good place for our Fieldstone friend to do one of his developments in there? No?
I don't.
No?
well, I think frankly, we're probably talking about, and this I think is to Commissioner Mitchell's point, this shouldn't be 8 units to the acre. This shouldn't be 12. This shouldn't be 20, I really think. This is 30, 40 units to the acre. This might be a player when it comes to TDRs and that type of a thing. So this, from a land use perspective, I think probably, if things worked out ideally, I would say probably ends up being something that right now we don't even have tools to accommodate, so we'd have to develop that kind of thing.
Are they planning on doing overpasses on both?
The tracks are going to be consolidated, so the overpass will go over the only
The one nearest the
set that would remain, yeah.
And then the other one will no longer be used?
The one to the east gets abandoned, yeah.
Okay.
So this one's abandoned because there's this front runner here.
That one's the one closest to I-15. I think the other one's on the other side of this road. Because isn't that the road? to the
This
hospital?
is, yeah, so again,
That's, yeah, that's.
I'm not sure that this is totally accurate.
It's not accurate.
I
It's
think
not-
this shows that these two lines join north of 2700 North. I think they actually will tie together to the south.
Yeah.
But this is the westernmost set of tracks then, and that's the only one that will remain. I think we can finish her off there, Mike. Some of the challenges that we have on this side of the interstate, visibility is great, but access is terrible. Even that one remaining set of railroad tracks makes getting to and from this area here that's between the tracks and I-15 really hard. It would be great if we could get 3 street crossings across those tracks to be able to access this area. In reality, I think we'll be lucky to get one. I think it's going to take a lot of work to get one, which is going to make it challenging for any land use. But residential development's not nearly as sensitive to access as different kinds of non-residential. So that's partly why I think we're ready to stake our money on non-residential over there in that area. So I should have reviewed this before we pulled it up, so I'd have get my bearings quicker.
2700 North here.
Yep, that's right. So this is the commercial area that we were just looking at that abuts the overpass and so forth. This is Canyon Creek Parkway. We do plan on having a roundabout here. And really down to, this is a building that is being constructed right now that you've probably seen. They've moved actually pretty quick with that. The same development has plans for these buildings here, so that would be the edge of light industrial development. And I don't think necessarily, given the nature of that, that there needs to be a lengthy transition to residential uses to the north. So
hospital is over here,
right.
like Barber Welding and that sits right here.
Yep.
New tilt-up building that's out there.
Yep.
Yeah. And, you know, again, from an access perspective, it is, so this track comes through here. This is the one then. So it's this space here that remains between the UTA rail line. So the UTA rail line is going to come through here in essence. It's going to connect, let's say it's going to connect from here down to here, which then is what allows for this to be abandoned here and gets them from, I mean, they own this track and this track, and that's how they make the connection.
So abandoned meaning you can pull that line, you can develop on it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, which makes other things a lot easier all the way up there. So this is a lot of moving parts. But then that creates a barrier for this space, limits access and different things like that that, you know, I think really need to heavily influence what we vision happening from a land use perspective in that area there. But proximity to jobs, proximity to shopping, proximity to transportation, I think all of those things really do make this a great area potentially for a type of density that would be hard to envision in other parts of Spanish Fork. So
Great access to the hospital, which is only gonna put more pressure on Highway 6 if we don't have something like this.
yep, exactly. That's
Single access over the railroad?
going to be the challenge. Yeah, so I mean, right, we would not feel comfortable seeing hundreds and hundreds of units approved, homes built on one access. However, I think getting accesses across those tracks is really going to be a challenge.
So you're talking about, so if this train track comes up and ties in right here, you're talking about anything in here, trying to get either across these ones or across these ones.
Right.
Or access from the south.
Yep, and access from the south is almost impossible given what's built.
Yeah.
This is a hard barrier.
Yeah, you can't come.
Yeah,
this
so
way. So is that? Is
fortunately,
this
it doesn't need to happen overnight.
Is that
Yeah,
kind
that's
of where it's going to go, or are you just kind of guessing?
This is pretty accurate, let's just say.
Closer to
Something like that. Would you say, Mike, Brandon, anybody that's seen it?
I haven't seen it, but
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got this piece then that's going to have the tracks to the south.
Right, which incidentally, this is planned to be annexed into Springville,
Is it?
if it's not.
Okay.
Is it in Springville now? Do you remember? Okay.
we should change that.
Highway,
Yeah, we should change that. It seems weird that you got just this one little pocket that's in Springville.
they won't give it up.
I'm sure they won't,
Not
but-
easily.
We've got a rock crushing facility on that property right now.
Which I think has, and I've assumed that that's just part of cleaning up the old raceway.
No, it's not associated with Raceway.
Oh, really?
They've been,
Put the
they've been
raceway
bringing
back.
in material there for, since last spring.
Had no idea. Is that's on Springville's property?
Springville property
Okay, well.
and.
Choose your neighbors.
Eh,
We'll let them,
might be
we'll let
city
them
officials,
do their thing, I guess.
Anyway, I don't know.
But again, just kind of back to the essence of what we're talking about here. This has tremendous potential. The city made the investment in this work because we don't want to blow it. And we want to get it right. And I say that understanding that we as the city don't hold all the cards, right? I mean, there are 7 or 8 key property owners here and a few others beyond that ideally we'd be partnering with going forward, all with a similar vision of what could happen in the area. Now, what the city can influence is just zoning law. So that's what I want to talk about next. Do you have a question
One
before?
quick question. We do lose that little piece to Springville, but on the west side of the freeway, we have clear down to, what's the building down there? Clear down to the,
zone
No.
out there.
As you go north on Main Street, you hit you hit the Springville line on Main Street where those large apartments are.
Mhm.
And that road that goes east and west is the Springville Spanish Fork
Correct.
line.
Yep.
So, as we go that way, it opens up that entire, well, you get too far that way and you're already into the buildings that are already built there. But there is considerable frontage on the frontage road.
Well, and one of the things I think that we've found, just in terms of interest in developing maybe further north of what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
around where the solid waste transfer station is going to be, access from both the Springville interchange, their 4th South interchange, and what will happen here, that is going to create the ability for people to access I-15 in their view, I think, very, very well, and that's really enhanced how people view the whole area.
I can tell you Springville is like-minded to the north of 2700 north, especially just east of I-15 as far as higher buildings with a lot more density, just FYI.
Got it. I appreciate that.
Have you talked to the landowners and how do they feel about the vision?
Mhm.
Good.
So every
They've been in these meetings.
They have been, yeah, some more than others, and frankly, I wish that a few had been more engaged. And right now, you're where I want to go. In short, we need to change the zoning for some of the properties in the area. Right now, pretty much everything north of the hospital, on the east side, and pretty much everything on the west side is simply zoned light industrial. I don't think that what I'm going to talk about here in a minute necessarily should be the final end goal, but I think it's an important step to take now, and I think it's an achievable step. So, Mike, if you can maybe just pull up that one page image that we have. It's a JPEG or a PDF. I'm going to propose and ask you to initiate a 2700 North is in the name, so I wonder if maybe.
Oh, no, here it is.
There we
So
go.
were you going to talk
Main
about
tab.
the top left zoning that you were going to put in place?
It's called the TG.
I said that'd be like spring, summer, didn't I? Isn't that what I said?
Number one to me.
So right now, picture this, and we could pull up the zoning map to make it more clear, but primarily everything that we have in the area is just light industrial. We're asking you now tonight in this meeting by motion to initiate the process of changing the zoning for properties in the area. That would include these changes here, and I'll just describe them. Changing from light and I don't think you need to express this as part of the motion, but just for me to be clear, changing industrial zoning over here along Canyon Creek Parkway to Business Park. Further north of that, changing industrial zoning to Commercial 2. Then on the west side of I-15, changing light industrial zoning, Industrial 1 zoning that is, to Commercial 2, as we're seeing there, that is Tim Daly, the Oakleberry property, to the west of Tim Daly, and the property on the north side of 2700 North here, changing that all again to Commercial 2, changing the corner property here, which is now owned by Colmena, to Commercial 2, and changing this property over here from light industrial to Business Park. Those are the changes that would be made. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different changes to the map. Now, the vision that we just looked at, it doesn't necessarily talk about or identify this as Business Park at all. It's residential. Generally, we don't change zoning to residential until we have an actual application before us that we're ready to act on.
Why not? Why are we leaving that and not connecting?
I'll give you one reason why. up to this line right here, we already have developments approved that are big, tilt-up office, or sorry, not even office warehouse, I'd say, but like real warehouse distribution kind of space. So
Will they come all the way out to Canyon Creek?
they do. They abut Canyon Creek. And I'll say this about the group that we're working with here. Their last phase will abut Canyon Creek. And we've had conversations about, okay, we know that you build big warehouse buildings, and that's what you do. But let's continue to talk about what makes the most sense along that frontage. You know, if the hospital's been open for a couple of years, when you guys are ready to develop that space, and maybe there are some other options, professional office or something like that, that makes some sense, they've suggested that they're willing to consider different things. So that's great frontage. I don't know if that's what you're hinting at, but
Yeah, that is what
I do. You could put the warehouse distribution space a lot of other places besides that.
I mean, you look at what Murray's done or struggled with around the IH ship there, which is a huge hospital compared to this one. But because of everything that's existing around it, it's made the changes up there painful. So just get it right the first time like we're trying to do.
Yeah.
That BP area is also potentially an amazing location for this 30 to 40 units per acre, especially since it's going to abut Canyon Creek Parkway, and the access where we were just talking about remains to be seen whether or not through the train tracks is going to be possible. And then business park, I'm thinking office buildings of some sort, and I don't know how in demand those are going to be even post everyone gets a vaccine, just because of how much companies have liked the cost reduction in not having this. I'm wondering about analyzing or just even thinking through some sort of super high density residential right behind the C2, just south of the C2.
You know, I don't want this to sound like a cop-out, but maybe it is. That what we're proposing happen now, I think, is more about preventing what we don't want to have happen
Well, what is it?
than achieving the ultimate goal. Because simply right now, if somebody wanted to come in here with how it's currently
How is it
zoned,
there?
Industrial, right?
industrial,
We want to get rid of that.
right.
And business park,
And then it can be changed to, like you were saying, that would be that higher density residential after you've seen.
Is that the city's typical modus operandi for business park? Is it's kind of free game?
No, I think this is a really unique situation. And to that matter, there are other things that, you know, we a lot of times use an agricultural zone as a holding zone. And I need to make sure I'm not misspeaking about the current zoning there. I'll do that right fast.
we don't want to make it RR.
Well, here's the other side of why I'm asking this way. So zone changes can get initiated by property owners. That's how it happens most of the time. Spanish Fork City initiates zone changes sometimes. Sometimes those are started by the Planning Commission, sometimes by the City Council. The way that happens is by motion in a public meeting. So that's where I'm getting to with you tonight, by way of just starting the ball rolling. And the reason that we're not ready tonight to act on this, so I think we're only ready to start the process, is that I've only had a specific conversation with property owners about this with 2 of 7 property owners that we need to engage. And I am not wanting to alienate them entirely at all. At the same time, if 6 of the 7 are comfortable with it, 5 of the 7, then I probably would still be recommending that ultimately, you know, after a public hearing, you make a recommendation to change things and the city council act on that. So we have some work still that we need to do with the property owners that for a lot of reasons I think is essential. Incidentally, the 2 that I've talked to so far are comfortable with this step. And I don't necessarily expect pushback from any but maybe one of them. But I guess I'd also say that this probably isn't a really polished product yet either. except that I know that, you know, everything that you see in red there, I think is, at the end of the day, essential.
I'm with you on that.
Beyond that, I think you could
So
you could
it's
go a
all-
lot of routes.
It's all I-1 right now.
Is it? Thanks.
Everything except for the sewer treatment plant.
I thought some of that might still be zoned agricultural.
So, but yeah, everything's I-1.
And the zoning differences between our I-1 and Business Park, they're not significant. I mean, there's a lot of crossover between those two zones by way of what's allowed, but the Business Park doesn't allow, outdoor trucking yards and a lot of outdoor things, different uses that are really easy to put in areas where utilities are limited and different things like that. Low-hanging fruit, if you will, in terms of what somebody would need at a particular location to be able to make a use like that work. And with the property zoned I-1, if it's a permitted use, there's no telling them no. So that's where I think it's important to raise the bar on what could happen.
Yeah, and I'm worried about it being BP and those permitted uses
Same things.
is what I'm worried about.
Well,
And I'm
okay.
wondering if I'm wondering if Kevin might have been onto something rural residential. Well, then,
Or even agriculture.
and you zone it agricultural or rural residential, and you simultaneously make a motion to amend the general plan to allow for mixed use or high density residential, or
So the question is just what you're saying, Dave. We know we don't want it to be I-1 because of the uses there. But going to what Joseph's saying, is there anything that's BP that we also wouldn't want there? Because if there isn't, then it doesn't make sense to propose it to be.
I think it's a great corridor for residential uses. I really do. But at the same time, if Boyer Company came in and said, we want to build, 150,000 square foot professional office buildings, which I don't think is going to happen, I think we would say, how do we help you make that happen? So
I agree with that.
that's having the business park zoning in place. I don't think that really concerns us. And frankly, I think just because of how the market is now and how it's probably going to be for a while, you said it, I think, changing the general plan, or maybe it was Kevin, to kind of paint the picture that residential uses in the area are worth pursuing. I think the market right now would probably respond most quickly to that, is my thought.
Yes, which may or may not be a good thing based on what you said earlier, because if the triangle piece can actually get access, I'm with you, that would be a fantastic high density residential area. Absolutely. And if that was actually in play, I would love the business park, because the idea of having employees and people commute in and work there and then go to our restaurants and buy our houses and rent our apartments, amazing.
Yeah,
So urban
I
density.
agree.
What we'd be looking for there, right?
Urban
Or
density,
even something
and maybe it's urban density with a different density range, to really be
Urban
able
density too.
to. Yeah, maybe, honestly, that'd be the idea.
I might be sold on.
In terms of just that business park versus some kind of really dense residential, in my mind, they're really similar in a lot of ways. In terms of just their impact on the surrounding area, trip generation, the needs that they have, access and that sort of a thing. I think probably a business park user is going to demand greater visibility than maybe a residential developer would. Probably they would demand better access than a residential developer, but might be talking about similarly sized buildings, similar bulk mass, lot coverage, all of those different things that make up a development. I think I think either of those could work really, really well.
What's the general plan in this area?
It's primarily business park with some of the kind of outlying areas being still light industrial.
That's mixed use. That's great.
I think that's Business Park.
That's purple, not blue.
Yeah, so
You guys, fun fact, I'm colorblind, I'm like dark blue and purple. My wife like caught me on it, I'm like, hey, will you just give me my dark blue dress? And I'm like, yeah, purple.
I thought it was blue until we saw the
I thought it was blue.
next to it.
Thanks, Sean, that was helpful, I appreciate you. 'Cause I thought it was blue.
Okay, so based on all that long drawn out discussion, is the best thing for us to recommend, are we recommending to the city council that they change the zoning to
No,
this?
just that they initiate looking into it, right?
that's the right way to do it. So it would be one of you saying, I move that we direct staff to initiate zone changes, as discussed tonight. That doesn't bind anything, but it just starts the ball rolling as if a property owner came in and made application.
So moved.
I'll second
I won't remember all of it, but so moved.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that the planning commission recommends the planning commission and city council goes into discussions to determine the appropriate zoning in the area of the map that we have described and discussed tonight.
So remove city council from your motion. I think you're good, because they're gonna have to make their own. Yeah, you're.
Just staff?
Yep, and then
Just to
city
start the ball
council.
rolling. and
Okay,
then
everything I said, but directing staff to start that ball rolling.
Perfect. Got a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is a big deal. And I think this will be the subject of other discussions. And
So what that does is it makes it so people can't apply under the current zoning now. So we've formally initiated, yeah, so
That's
we have,
another part of
we
it.
have now formally initiated zone changes.
Same thing as what we were looking at on Del Monte, because we had months ago had staff start looking into general plan changes. They now couldn't do anything until we had finalized our general plan.
So it's six-month window.
Okay, speaking of vision items, one other vision item to add to your list besides the duplexes thing is Dave's trees.
yep, I got that. Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate that.
trees.
Yep.
You still think
That's actually on my list.
trees? I don't think they'll make it, Dave. Is it because of in and out? I'm with you. Let's do it. Palm trees.
Where there's a will, right?
Yes.
We can do anything. So I have community outreach, parking, we've talked about that. Community outreach, that would be,
Was this from the work session?
this would be, we'd start this for the work session at least, with the idea that perhaps, depending on what all you guys want us to focus on, like 6 months, a year, 2 years or whatever, it's just a list that you prioritize and we check things off as they're complete. Infill overlay design criteria, any other things come to mind now, or
I would like an update on how the changes that we made to the accessory dwelling
that is a great one.
has affected things.
Needs modification.
What do we call? There's a term I want to use for that. I'll get it right, but maybe not right now.
The one traffic issue that I always am worried about is that when the left turners onto Del Monte Road
From Quail Hollow. So you guys are gonna look into that though.
Yeah, that's a
as
tough
far
one.
as, yeah.
That's probably more technical than
Coming out of Quail Hollow, turning left to go to Arrowhead.
that'll maybe
on
be
Del
part of the
Monte.
Del Monte, or sorry, the Tingy.
Teeny property.
If there's
Their
anything-
south entrance, you could put a roundabout. A very small traffic circle, but so you could turn right, take a
And
loop
go
and come
around
back.
that, which
So
would-
there'd be no left-hand turns out
Which
there.
I think would be helpful. I mean,
In the morning rush, yeah, Jared, one of our staff, lives there, just like 3 houses in.
Yep.
And I've asked him, he's like, nah, maybe for 10, 20, 30 minutes max is when that window is. But all the rest of the day, there's nothing.
It's fine,
Now,
yeah,
there's
the
gonna be a
rest-
lot more cars and stuff there after it's all
there will
built,
be,
so.
yeah, but
ALA is really the contributor to all of
Yeah.
this.
What we're adding is
Everything we're
not going
doing
to
is
affect.
to alleviate the traffic at those 2 times of the day that we have We have kids there, and then you have 3 months that you don't have kids there.
So with the teeny property, it may be we need a unit or two less, so we can have that area be wide enough to actually have things be able to turn around.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we can't do much. It's only one lot away from the intersection.
Yeah,
Something to look at for sure.
it's something to look at, absolutely.
Okay. I'll tell you what, and I don't mean to cut the discussion short, but that's enough for me to get a running list going and to shoot that out. So I'll put an email together today with a few things that we've talked about tonight, send it out to you guys. Then on the 26th, because of some direction I've been given by the city council, I really want to talk about the community outreach. We don't need to spend an hour on that, but take some time on that. And then parking is another thing that we've talked about recently that seemed to be kind of high on a priority list, so we could talk about that as well. And any other things that you guys want to have priorities for that night, including to have some time to talk about what would be on the agenda the following week.
It's good.
I make a motion that we, close the meeting, adjourn.
Motion to close,
Second.
and we're closed. Thank you.
Good game.
So Dave, I don't know,
Good game.
I don't know, Dave, who's
Green button or red button, whatever you push.
class.
We love it.
Or the red button.
My daughter's in a new immersion program, and so is my son.
Oh, very good.
He's been doing that.
So Dave, I don't know whose idea it was to do the